Shalawam. This is Adasabat Saiwan, and this is a new addition to the 3 days of darkness. And as I promised, that once I receive word about any new information given to me by Ruach HaKadosh, that I will bring it and present it to you. Now, this particular study is called The Season and the Date of the 3 Days of Darkness. And the question is, when will the 3 days of darkness due to occur on the earth? Let us find out together. Now, before we get started, I just want to say that I received confirmation about the date, and the date some years ago, a few years ago, about 3.5 years, almost 4 years ago, about 3.5 years ago. But I did not receive the interpretation or the understanding. The word came to me, but the understanding only came recently. Right? The reason why the understanding came later is because it was not the time appointed. And because the time of this event is going to take place soon, he wants his people to know so that they can get themselves prepared spiritually. All right, but once you're prepared spiritually, you will be physically prepared. Don't worry about the people out there talking about getting candles, wax candles, and black plastic bags for their windows and this and that. Don't worry about that. If it's something that can be done, people will gravitate towards that. But when it comes to cleaning up yourself spiritually, that's something they don't want to do. They love themselves as they are, full of sin. All right? They don't want to change who they are. They don't want to change how they think and how they behave. All right? They don't want to give their hearts wholly and solely to Allah Hayam, because when you do that, He's going to tell you, you got to give this up. You got to give that up because it is sin before my eyes. And they don't want to do that. All right? So I'm going to let you know that I'm going to give you a date. I know people say, well, we don't know the date or the hour. Well, what does that pertain to? That has nothing to do with the 3 days of darkness. That has to do with another event at the end of the age, that not even the Son knows the day or the hour. But for all the different events, Allah Hayam Yahweh gave His servants the season and the date. You just have to trust Him and believe Him. That's all we need to do. Trust and believe. And the reason why many people may not want to believe this is because they say, well, this is a Roman Catholic doctrine. They don't want to believe that there's an event called the 3 days of darkness coming. It sounds far-fetched. When it happened with our forefathers, it wasn't far-fetched. It is an event that is coming. Don't worry about what the Roman Catholics say. Worry about what the word of Allah Hayam is saying to us today. All right? And there's a reason why he brought the 3 days of darkness in the past to Goshen, to Matzorayim. Sorry, not Goshen, to Matzorayim. Goshen was the only place that did not have any darkness. But there were 3 reasons why Allah Hayam Yahweh brought the darkness. And there are going to be reasons again today why He must bring the darkness. And we're going to see that being revealed in this study. Okay? And it is important that I go through and you go through with me the study, looking at the scriptures so that we can see where the information is coming from. Because the first thing people say, well, how do you know this? Where is it in the scriptures? So I'm going to give you the scriptures and I'm going to explain to you what you're reading. Okay? Okay, let's get started. Now, the knowledge of the season and the date of the 3 days of darkness is within our grasp. We only have to take a careful look at the scriptures and the Apocrypha to understand when it first occurred for our forefathers. As it was before, so it will be again. So there was 3 days of darkness that occurred in Matzarayim, which is Egypt, and it will happen again. Okay? Alahayam Yahweh has his timing for his events, and as the 3 days of darkness was used as a judgment upon Matzarayim, we have to be aware that it was also used as judgment against the rebellious Habanai Yasharaal, the children of Yasharaal, who did not want to leave Matzarayim. So those were two reasons so far why Alahayam Yahweh sent the darkness. It was a judgment set against Matzarayim, who enslaved his people and treated them horrendously. And they enslaved them through trickery. And it was also a judgment set against the rebellious Habanai Yasharaal, the children of Yasharaal, who did not want to leave Matzarayim. They were treated bitterly. Their lives were bitter. They cried out for help to be delivered. But when it was time for them to get ready to go, they said, no, 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 we do not want to go. Get Alahayam to fix them, Matzarayim, so that they can accept us and treat us fairly. There's nothing for me in the wilderness. Why do I have to go to the wilderness? We've been living here in Goshen for several generations. And this is the same mindset that many of our people, speaking of the southern kingdom, have today. And this is the reason why he must bring the 3 days of darkness again, because of this same mindset, where they do not want to leave this place where they are living in, that is the lands, you call them the lands of our captivity, the lands where our forefathers were brought through slavery, and they were slaves. And then we were born in these lands of our forefathers' captivity. And we have eked out some sort of a life in these lands of our captivity. And because of that, we don't want to leave. We have a house, we have a mortgage, we have a job, we have a business, we have whatever. We don't want to leave this behind, even though we're hated. Even though there's something better waiting for us, we don't want to leave this. How do we know we have something better? That's what our forefathers said when Masha told them that soon they'll be leaving Goshen to go into the wilderness. Alahayam did not give Masha all of the information about the promised land and why they needed to go into the wilderness. They got the information as time developed. And it was to test them and their faith in him, that after seeing the miracles of those 10 judgments against Matzarayim, their slave masters, will they still trust me to take care of them? So it was judgment against Matzarayim, judgment against the rebellious ones of Yasharaal, the 12 tribes, and thirdly, it was a judgment set against the God of Matzarayim called Ra, who happened to be Parao. And if you know anything about Ra, Ra was a sun god, worshipped by Matzarayim. And sun speaks of light. And here Alahayam brought darkness to the sun god, and he couldn't do anything about it. So judgment against Matzarayim, Judgment against the rebellious of Yasharaal, and judgment against the God of Matsarayam. Maybe there was another God too. So let's just say gods of Matsarayam, because all 10 plagues were also set against the gods of Matsarayam. Because you know they serve more than one God. So they have the sun god Ra. They had another god that was like a sun god. Okay. So already we have information to understand why Alahayam Yahweh brought the darkness in the first Exodus. Well, that preceded the first Exodus. And now he's going to send it again, because the regathering of the southern kingdom, although it is not an exodus like walking into the wilderness, it is a type of exodus because we're leaving. That's what exodus is. Exodus means we're exiting, we're leaving. And I already said in my previous studies that there will be many of our brethren that will perish in the 3 days of darkness, just like those rebellious ones in Goshen, or rebellious forefathers in Goshen. They perished out of rebellion because they were rebellious. Okay, so you see now the similarities already. Let us look at this in the Apocrypha, then to look at the sequence of events after this plague of 3 days of darkness. Many people make the mistake of looking at the sequence of events concerning the plagues that occurred in Matsarayam, but this will not necessarily happen in that exact order. Many of those judgment plagues of Matsarayam will occur throughout the other end times judgments of Alahayam, like the trumpets and the vial judgments. He repeated many of the judgments set against Matsarayam in his trumpets and vial judgments. Okay? But what has happened, some people, they believe that just as it happened in that sequence of events, with the locusts and then this and then this and then that, then the 3 days of darkness, that it will happen like that again. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not going to happen exactly like that again, because we have to look at the events and not the plagues that occurred in Matsarayam. So we are going to look at the sequence of events surrounding the 3 days of darkness, and then we will be able to determine the season and the date. All right? So let's look at Yashar, which is the book of Jasher, chapter 80, verse 36. Alahayam sent darkness on Matsarayam, that the whole land of Matsarayam and Pathros became dark for 3 days, so that a man could not see his hand when he lifted it up to his mouth. So it was so dark. Even if you put your hand before your face, you wouldn't be able to see your hand. It was that dark. All right? Verse 37. At that time, many of the people of Yasharaal died who had rebelled against Yahweh and who would not listen to Masha and Ahawaran, that's Aaron, and believed not in them that Alahayam had sent them, and who had said, we will not go forth from Matsarayam because we will perish with hunger in a desolate wilderness. They didn't want to leave the comforts of Matsarayam. Despite the misery that they were living in, they didn't want to leave the comforts, the good food that they were eating. You see, they cared more about their bellies than about even their own well-being. And worse yet, they didn't even care anything about Alahayam. They cried out to him for help. He sent help, and they rejected it. So it made him angry to destroy them. There were those who would not listen to the voice of Masha. Yahweh plagued them in the 3 days of darkness, and Yasharaal buried them in those days without Matzorayam knowing of them or rejoicing over them. So during the 3 days of darkness, so that Matzorayam would not see that Al-Hayam struck out against his own people, he did it in the 3 days of darkness when the darkness hid what Al-Hayam did to these rebels. All right? And so it was in the past, so it will be again. The rebels amongst us will be plagued during the 3 days of darkness, and they will die. No one's going to know that they were plagued and they were killed by Alahayam Yahweh, because it will be done in darkness. And their bodies will not be found. Because when the earth begins to shake, the heavens are shaking, the earth is shaking, it's going to just swallow them up. He has done it in the past, he will do it again. The earth now is going to bury them. Shamawath chapter 10 verse 21. That's the book of Exodus chapter 10 verse 21. And Yahweh said unto Masha, stretch out your hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness, chashak, meaning obscurity, over the land of Matzorayam, even darkness which may be felt. And Masha stretched forth his hand towards heaven, and there was a thick apala, meaning calamity, darkness, and that darkness is chashak. So 2 words there is speaking of darkness. Thick, darkness, the word thick is the same word. Apala is another kind of form of darkness, another word for darkness. But Alahayam wanted us to understand the kind of darkness that he was sending upon this land. In all the land of Matzorayam, 3 days. They saw not, this is verse 23, they saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days, but all Hamanai Yasharaal had light in their dwellings. So he wants us to understand the kind of darkness that is coming, that he sent in the first place, and the darkness that is coming. Now, I know they said that a man could not see his hand when he lifted up to his mouth. If you've been following along in these series that I've done, these studies that I've done, I told you that people will be literally paralyzed. Now, when I say paralyzed, it means that your ability to do what you want your body to do, it will not do it. Because of the great fear that is coming with this darkness. You will not have experienced darkness to this degree ever again. You've never experienced it before, and you will never experience it again, even if you survive it. And it's just the shock of it all and the fear of it all that you will not be able to move and do what you want to do. And him explaining that if a man lifted up his hand to his mouth, he will not see it, is just to explain to us how dark the darkness is going to be. If you had the strength to lift your hand to your mouth, you will not be able to see your hand because it is that dark. All right? And then he explained it even further and said it was a darkness that was felt. Because it, and again, he called it thick darkness. So this is not natural darkness. This is a phenomenon, an unusual occurrence. It's not like a blackout. or anything of that nature. It is a darkness that is coming that will literally eat up every sound and light that is on this earth. And this time, it is not coming in one country, it is coming worldwide. The whole earth is going to be covered with this darkness. All right? Alahayam Yahweh is surrounded by Hashak, darkness. For it is out of this darkness that he spoke to Yasharaal when they were in the wilderness. And I did a detailed study in part 1 of the 3 days of darkness to explain the different kinds of darkness. And that Alahayam Yahweh dwells in this Hashak. All right? Now this darkness that is due to come to the earth will be from Alahayam Yahweh and not the devils. There are many people, even our own brethren out there teaching is coming from the devils. Yes, Alahayam will release the devils to plague particular persons, but this is not their playground. They're in the darkness for his specific purpose, which is to plague people. This is his doing. This is Alahayam's doing. And the darkness is coming in your homes. You can't shut this darkness out. No more than you can stop air from coming into your house. Even if you seal up every nook and cranny, every crack, there's a way for air to just come in, seep in through little cracks, through little crevices. But this darkness is even greater than air. It's just going to be everywhere. Walls can't keep it out. Black curtains can't keep it out. Closing your windows can't keep it out. It's coming in your homes. And it's going to fill every corner of your home from top to bottom, from the roof to the ceiling. You cannot escape this darkness. The only way anyone can escape this darkness is if they already have the light of Alahayam burning within them. And that is called truth. If you're worshiping pagan gods, you're in darkness, son, daughter. You're in darkness. And that darkness is only going to be amplified when this darkness comes. Similarly, when this darkness comes, and it finds, in fact, it would not be able to come near those that have the light of Alahayam within them. And that light is going to be amplified by the glory of Alahayam. Okay, let's read on. It will be a darkness that will be so thick that it will be felt, and it will cause one to become paralyzed due to great fear. The only people not affected by this darkness will be the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom. Understand this. The plague of death will be connected to the 3 days of darkness, and it will pass through every household on the earth, except the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom. So we know that the plague of death came last after the 3 days of darkness in the 10 plagues set against Matzorayim. But this time, the 3 days of darkness, you're going to see that the plague of death is also connected to this event. It's going to occur within this event. Every household is going to experience death or even deaths. Not just one. It's not going to be the firstborn. It's going to be just deaths. Why? Because of all the wickedness that has been done against our people for generations. Do you know how many of our people died on the ships when they picked them up from Africa and transported them by ship to various locations in the Caribbean and America. Do you know how many? In the millions. Allah Hayam is keeping count. And he does not forget. And those are just the ones that died on the way. How about the ones that were killed when they were in the land? They were skinned alive, hung from trees, beaten. All kinds of wickedness they did against our people. And they think that they're going to get away with it. Well, this 3 days of darkness is payback for some of the atrocities that were done against us. The southern kingdom. All right. The northern kingdom will still be plagued by the darkness, but those who will be called of Allah Hayam, and even many of the rebels will not die, just like it was for our forefathers. Many were rebellious, yet he spared them all in the darkness because they were rebellious, yet they were ready to leave. Once they got out of Goshen, then they started rebelling against Allah Hayam. And he dealt with them in the wilderness. Let's look at Yashar chapter 80 again, verse 40. The darkness was very great in Matsarayam for 3 days, and any person who was standing when the darkness came remained standing in his place. He couldn't even sit down. He was paralyzed with fear. That's what I'm saying. The fear is going to grip you. He that was sitting remained sitting, and he that was lying continued lying in the same state. And he that was walking remained sitting on the ground in the same spot, because you're walking and this darkness comes, you're going to collapse. You're going to stop. You'll be like, what is going on here? And yet those that were standing, they didn't even have the strength to sit, because they were already standing. They were already stationary. But this one here now, he is walking or she's walking. They're already active. So the most that they can do now is just sit and remain sitting for the 3 days. I'm telling you, when I had that dream where I was running and all of a sudden in mid-stride, I was just stuck in mid-stride until he released me from the darkness. He wanted me to understand what it will be like. All right? And this thing happened to all Matsarayam until the darkness had passed away. So for 3 days and 3 nights, this is how they had to stay. So imagine, for 3 days and 3 nights, they couldn't eat, they couldn't drink, they could not go and do a bathroom break. They had to do it right where they stood, or sat, or laid, or was lying down. They had to do their business just where they were. They defiled themselves. Verse 41, the days of darkness passed away, and Yahweh sent Masha and Ahawaran to Habanai Yasharaal, saying, celebrate your feast and make your Passover, for behold, I come in the middle of the night among all Matsarayam. I will strike all their firstborn, from the firstborn of a man to the firstborn of a beast. And when I see your Passover, I will pass over you. So right after the 3 days of darkness came a celebration for Yasharaal. And that celebration was called Passover, or Pasach. All right? Verse 42. And Habanai Yasharaal did according to all that Yahweh had commanded Masha and Ahawaran. Thus did they in that night. It came to pass in the middle of the night that Yahweh went forth in the midst of Matsarayam and struck all the firstborn of Matsarayam, from the firstborn of man to the firstborn of beast. And Parao rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all Matsarayam. And there was a great cry throughout Matsarayam in that night, for there was not a house in which there was not a corpse. So when the 3 days of darkness was completed, sorry, yes, when the 3 days of darkness was completed, Allah Hayam Yahweh sent the plague of the death of the firstborn. All right? He didn't even let them sleep through the night and then discover in the morning the deaths of their firstborn. No. They heard death coming and taking their firstborn children. They heard it. It was a audible event. That's why they woke up. And that's why they went and checked on their babies. It wasn't in silence. It wasn't done in silence. So after the cry of the devil, the demon that passed over, we're going to talk about that in a bit. No, it was Matzarayam's turn to cry out, to lament. Allah Hayam himself did not pass over Goshen, although the scriptures would indicate that or made it seem as if he was the one that passed over. But you have to understand the language of Allah Hayam. You have to understand his language. Rather, he released an evil spirit to do so. So when he is utilizing these evil spirits to do his bidding, it's as if he himself is doing it because he's given them permission to do it. He instructed this evil spirit on what he wanted it to do, just like the evil spirits that he sent to Pharaoh to harden his heart. When you read the scriptures, it's going to sound as if Allah Hayam hardened Pharaoh's heart. When in fact, it wasn't Allah Hayam, it was an evil spirit that he sent to harden Pharaoh's heart. We have to understand this phenomenon and the language of Allah Hayam, which was made clear in the book of Yasharaal, that's the book of Jubilees. When Habanai Yasharaal was ready to leave Goshen, and he released or bound the devils as he saw fit. That's what Allah Hayam did. That's why when they left Goshen, they left on foot, speaking of Yasharaal. And Pharaoh came with his chariots, and he almost caught up to them, except he couldn't. Because Allah Hayam came between him and his people. Let's look at Yasharaal, the book of Jubilees, chapter 48, verse 13. On the 14th day, and on the 15th, and on the 16th, and on the 17th, and on the 18th days, Prince Mastema was bound and imprisoned and placed behind Habanai Yasharaal so that he might not accuse them. And who is Prince Mastema? Mastema is in the Bible, but it's under the word hatred. I did a explanation of this in the 3 days of darkness as well. Prince Mastema is another title given to Satan. All right? So when he says Prince Mastema, not only that one Satan, but all the Satans and all the devils and all the demons and all the unclean spirits were imprisoned and bound. If you can bound the general, of course, the rest of his soldiers are going to be bound as well. So Allah Hayam bound the devils. He calls them Mastema. All right, because they're all hatred. They hate him. They hate his people. So even though it sounds like it's one person, it is the entire group of evil spirits that he imprisoned and placed behind Habanai Yasharaal. Verse 14. On the 19th day, we let them, Mastema and his demons, loose so that they might help Matzarayam pursue Habanai Yasharaal, the children of Yasharaal. Now, pay attention to the dates. All right? Let's go back to the dates. The 14th day, the 15th day, the 16th, the 17th, and the 18th, and then we have the 19th day. Okay, so pay attention to those days because there's a reason why he mentioned those days. All right, we'll get back to that. Verse 15, he hardened their hearts and made them stubborn, and the plan was devised by Yahweh Alahayana, our Alahayam, that he might strike Matzorayam and throw them into the sea. So he was the Lord. When he was ready, he loosed these demons, all right, so that they might cause Matzorayam, out of stubbornness, out of anger, to pursue Yasharaal. After they were gone for 3 days, they had already left for 3 days. So Alahayam gave them a 3-day start. All right. So now they're coming after them on the 19th day, because the 14th day, there was something that we're going to see that took place. It was also the beginning of the Pasach. From the 14th, they enjoyed the Pasach. The 15th, 16th, let's go back to the numbers here. So they enjoyed the Pasach the 14th day. They left on the 15th day, and the 16th, 17th, and 18th days were the days that they were traveling. All right. And then on the 19th day, they decided to pursue them. They were in hot pursuit, and they would have caught up with them, except Alahayam came between them and his people. All right. Let's look at Yasharaal chapter 48, verse 12. This is earlier now in the book of Jubilees. Yahweh Alahayam threw all the people whom he, Mastima, hatred, brought to pursue Yasharaal into the middle of the sea, into the depths of the bottomless pit, beneath Habanai Yasharaal, even as the people of Matzorayam had thrown their children into the river. Remember, that was something that Matzorayam did. All the babies under the age of 2 years old, male babies, they threw them into the river Nile. So this is payback for what they did to his people. He took vengeance on 1 million of them, in addition to 1,000 strong and energetic men were destroyed because of the death of the suckling children of your people, which they had thrown into the river. Alahayam does not forget all the wickedness that was done against us. And there are foolish people out there that want us to forget all the wickedness that was done against us. Oh, it wasn't us that did it to you. It was another people. No, it wasn't another people. It was your people. You can't make me forget what was done against me, done against our people. And here I am today. And the only reason why now they're scrambling, these same offspring of these people that enslaved us, they're scrambling today because they know that there's judgment coming against them. And there's nothing else they can do about it. All right? They want us to feel guilty about what they did to us, when they're the ones that should be feeling guilty. But an apology isn't going to help them. Reparations aren't going to help them, because Alahayam is coming with great fury, and he is coming to destroy those that destroyed us. Look at the example here. This is the reason why he caused Mastema to harden Pharaoh's heart, to get all his strong men and their chariots to come chasing after Habanai Yasharaal. And just as they drowned our babies, he drowned them. He drowned them. It's payback time. All right. Yasharaal chapter 48, verse 16. On the 14th day, we bound him that he might not accuse Habanai Yasharaal, that's Mastema, On the day when they asked Matzorayim for vessels and garments, vessels of silver and vessels of gold and vessels of bronze, in order to exact from Matzorayim a price in return for the bondage they had been forced to serve. So they were forced to work through trickery. They were enslaved through trickery. They were not paid. The plan was that they wanted to enslave them, but they could not enslave them because they feared our people. So through trickery, they promised them work and payment. They never paid them. So Allah Hayam said, okay, there are reparations due for you. And Allah Hayam bound Mastima, meaning hatred, all the demons, so that when the children of Yasharaal went to the doors of Matzorayim and knock on their doors, they had their gold and silver right there waiting to give to them. Because there were no demons there to whisper in their ears to say, don't give them anything, don't give them anything, they're no good people. No, 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 no. They did not have that. All they had was the fear, because remember what happened. They had just gotten over, well, they haven't even gotten over it yet, but the death of their firstborn. They're still reeling from that. And Allah Hayam put it in their hearts that they have to give to his people, because it was payment that was due to them. So you got these ones here running around looking for reparations from the government. Allah Hayam did not send us to go looking for reparations. Telling you that right now. He is not sending us to go and get reparations. Now, the 14th day would have been the Pesach, but this is during the daytime. Pesach had started on that 14th day, and he said unto the 15th day. Usually it should be from the 13th day to the 14th day. Okay, the evening of the 13th to the evening of the 14th will complete the 14th day. But in this case, he caused it to be the 14th day, the evening of the 14th day, that they killed the Passover lamb. All right? Verse 17. We did not lead Habanai Yasharaal from Matzorayim empty-handed. They did not leave empty-handed. They left with great wealth. They pillaged Matzorayim. Yasharaal chapter 49, verse 1. Remember the commandment which Yahweh commanded you concerning the Pesach. You should celebrate it in its season on the 14th day of the first month. You should kill the sacrifice before evening. They should eat it by night on the evening of the 15th from the time of the setting of the sun. So this is where it is slightly different from what we are doing today, or what we see instructed in the Bible. All right? So from the 14th day of the first month, you kill the sacrifice, the lamb, before evening. So during the daytime, that's when they went and pillaged Matzorayim. And they had to eat it by night on the evening of the 15th from the time of the setting of the sun. So they kill it on the 14th, and between that time and to the 15th of the time of the setting of the sun, they had that time to eat it by night. All right? Because on this night, at the beginning of the festival and the beginning of joy, you were eating Hapasak, meaning the Pesach, in Matzorayim, when all the powers of Mastima had been loosed to kill all the firstborn in the land of Matzorayim, from the firstborn of Parao to the firstborn of the captive maid servant in the mill, and even the firstborn of the cattle. This is the sign that Yahweh gave them in every house, on the doorpost on which they saw the blood of a lamb of the first year. They should not enter to kill, but should pass by it that all those who should be exempt that were in the house, because the sign of the blood was on its doorpost. And the powers of Yahweh did everything as Yahweh had commanded them, and they passed by all Habanai Yasharaal, and the plague did not come on on Yasharaal, on them to destroy them. That's Yasharaal. So let's go back here and let's try to understand a few things, all right? Because I know the Apocrypha, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, as we would say in the Caribbean. And we know that here, sorry if you're hearing some noise, I had to take off my glasses and I had to put them back on, my computer glasses. Okay. We know that the Pesach is usually eaten on the 13th, from the evening of the 13th to the evening of the 14th will make the Pesach, the Passover, the feast of Passover. But here it sounds like it was done differently. That the Pesach was killed on the 14th, and then they ate it by night on the evening of the 15th, because that was the time too that they left. They left on the 15th. They left Matzorayim on the 15th. All right, so this is slightly different from the command that we will read coming up in the book of Shalawam. All right, so that's the only difference. Now, whether it was like that or whether they changed it, it doesn't matter. All right, it doesn't matter. We know the truth. All right, so let's read on. So it did not come near to them to destroy them, cattle, man, or even the dog. The dogs were spared. The plague was oppressive in Matzorayim, and there was no house in Matzorayim where there was not one dead, and weeping and lamentation. And as it was then, so it will be again. So it will be in the world this time. Verse 6. All Yasharaal was eating the flesh of the Pesach lamb and drinking the wine, and was praising and blessing and giving thanks to Yahweh Elohim of their fathers, and they were ready to get out from under the yoke of Matzorayim and the evil bondage. They were celebrating because their redemption is so near they can taste it. They were getting ready to leave bondage, enslavement. Verse 7. Remember this day all the days of your life. Observe it from year to year, all the days of your life. Once a year, on its day, according to all the law of it. Do not forsake it from day to day or from month to month. In other words, do not change its month. Do not change its day. All right. The instructions that he gave to our forefathers in the wilderness, we are to follow those instructions, not the instructions of those fakers in our land. We don't follow them. We follow what Elohim Yahweh says in his word to do. Verse 8. It is an eternal law and engraved on the heavenly tablets regarding all Habanai Yasharaal, that they should observe it on its day once a year, every year, throughout all their generations. There is no limit of days for this law forever. And I know the Christian churches, they do something called the communion, which they've taken from the Roman Catholic Church. And the communion is nothing to do with this. It is just leavened bread and grape juice. How is that anything like the Passover? The Passover is significant and it has a purpose, and it's to do with our forefathers leaving in haste. And that's why they could not cause the bread. They did not make bread with leaven. It was also symbolic of the body of Hamashiach, who was without corruption, because leaven in this case represented or represents corruption. All right? Several major events took place after the 3 days of darkness in Goshen. So now we're going to look at these events, all right? So that we can understand the timing of the 3 days of darkness. Habanai Yasharaal was instructed to keep the first ever Passover celebration, as this was the method Elohim used to preserve the firstborn of his people from death. The significance of Pesach, which is the Passover, cannot be overstated. However, keeping the Pesach was their joyous event, while at the same time it was death for Matzorayim, which was their event of great grief. So let us understand the significance of Pesach then and how it is relevant for us today in its connection to the 3 days of darkness. Now, the 3 days of darkness preceded the Pesach, and the Pesach preceded the first exodus of the 12 tribes of Yasharaal. Therefore, as we are looking at the timing of the 3 days of darkness, we will also be given the timing for the regathering of the southern kingdom. There will not be any delay once the 3 days of darkness begin for our regathering, which will begin immediately after the completion. Sorry, let me read that again. There will not be any delay once the 3 days of darkness begin, for our regathering will begin immediately after the completion of the darkness. It will begin immediately because Hamashiach is going to come through that eastern portal at the ending of the 3 days of darkness to regather his people. That's Matthew chapter 24. All right? Although in the days of our forefathers, when they were in Goshen, there were a few days before they left due to the Pesach generation celebration. So let me read that again. That was kind of stated strangely. So although, because what I'm showing is that our regathering is immediately after the 3 days of darkness, in comparison to the days of our forefathers when they were in Goshen, there were a few days before they left due to the Pesach celebration. So they celebrated the Pesach in Matzorayim. So after the 3 days of darkness, then there were a few days before they actually left. But that's not going to be so for the southern kingdom. So that is the only difference. Well, I shouldn't say the only difference. That is one of the differences that will be, when we look at the 3 days of darkness and our departure, and their 3 days of darkness and their departure. Because there are other slight differences as well. For example, there was no death for Matzorayim in the 3 days of darkness, but there was death for Yasharaal. But in our 3 days of darkness, there's going to be death worldwide, except there will be none in the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom's homes. All right. Now, this is the slight difference between their departure and our departure, and we will understand why later on. There's always a reason. What were the instructions given to Yasharaal when it came to Pesach? We're going to look at that as well. But before we address the Pesach, let us understand that what was done before will be done again, especially when it comes to the regathering of Yahweh's people. As he did at first, he will do again. It was not a mistake that Matzorayim was mentioned again to allow us to know that his people are going to be delivered from bondage like our forefathers, with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm and with fury poured out, as it was in Matzorayim, where his people were enslaved and treated horrendously. And he sought, meaning Elohim, sought revenge against their slave masters, so he will do again. So let us look at this scripture here in Debarayim. So So he will do again. So he will do again. I thought that sentence was finished. Let's finish that sentence with the plague of death, to repay for all of our forefathers who were destroyed in slaveries since the time they were taken from our land. Allah Hayam has not forgotten, and he is keeping tabs on all the wickedness that was done against his people, and he will repay. So we are going to look at this scripture taken from the Bible, the Barayam, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 68. And Yahweh shall bring you into Matzorayam, which is the house of bondage, enslavement. This is what Matzorayam here represents. Remember, Allah Hayam speaks prophetically, and you have to understand the language that he is speaking, and you cannot do so by just merely reading the words. It has to be revealed. So when he said, and Yahweh shall bring you into Matzorayam again with ships, he's not talking about literal Matzorayam. He's talking about a situation that was similar to what our forefathers experienced, and that was slavery, house of bondage. By the way whereof I spoke unto you, you shall see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So Allah Hayam is already letting us know, letting our forefathers know that there's going to be another kind of enslavement because of your rebellion. Because if you read the entire chapter of the Barayam, chapter 28, it tells you of the blessings and the curses. And this is part of the curses, being slaves again. As terrible as it was in Matzorayam, that's why he called it Matzorayam. Our distant forefathers were enslaved in Matzorayam the first time through trickery. Our forefathers were taken in slavery about 400 years ago in ships. And we are the fourth generation that will be delivered, but not by ships, as many are believing erroneously. They figured if we were taken in ships, then we are going to leave in ships. I don't know where they get that from. Where did they get that from? Our distant forefathers were the ones who were delivered by the miracles of Allah Hayam, ending with the 3 days of darkness, the Pesach celebration, and then the Exodus. So you see the sequence of events that took place. The 3 days of darkness, the Pesach celebration, which also involved the death of the firstborn of Matzorayam. So while they were grieving, our people were celebrating. And then afterwards, the Exodus, freedom. As it was before, so it will be again, except a slight change, which we will look at later. I keep saying that, right? It will be a slight change. So let's look at Shemawath chapter 12, verse 1, book of Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. And Yahweh spoke unto Masha and Ahawaran in the land of Matzorayam, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. And that is speaking of the month of Abayab. They call it Abib, but there's no eyes in our language. It's called Abayab. It is the first month of our year. The devils in our land, they change it to Nisan or Nisan, when in fact it is Abayab. That's the beginning of our months. Verse 3. Speak you unto all the congregation of Yasharaal, saying, On the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. So from the 10th to the 14th day, they had to keep this lamb separated from all the other lambs. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Yasharaal shall kill it in the evening. So just before Pasach begins, they will kill this lamb and prepare it for their memorial feast day called Pasach. So this was done on the 14th. Remember, in Yawabal, it says the 15th, the evening of the 15th. Now, whether that is an error, like I said, doesn't really matter. Because what Allah Hayam is going to do today, it fits within the scriptures here written that He has given to us. Shamawaf. We're given key information which will help us to determine when the 3 days of darkness occurred in Goshen for our forefathers. So now we're trying to determine when the 3 days of darkness occurred in Goshen, on what day. We can figure that out, all right? After the event of darkness passed, then Yasharaal was instructed concerning the Pasach lamb. The beginning of our month will always be Abayab and not Nayasan. They call it Abib, and they call the beginning of the month today Nayasan, Nisan, which the fakers in our land change. So they're the ones that change it from Abayab to Nayasan. I know you will say, well, there's a scripture in there that they call the first month Nayasan. They changed it. It was always and always will be Abayab. If the lamb was chosen to be kept from the 10th of Abayab, then it would mean that the 3 days of darkness occurred on the 7th of the month of Abayab. Just got to do the math. Count backwards from the 10th, and what you're left with will be the 7th. Remember, everything was done in haste and in quick succession, as the event of the Exodus was on their doorsteps by this time. All right? Verse 7 of the same Shamawath chapter 12. Okay? Now we're moving on to verse 7. They shall take the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper doorpost of the houses wherein they shall eat it. They shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread and with bitter herbs. So this is enough information to know that when we are celebrating the Pasach today, there are only 3 things that we need. Lamb or goat meat roasted with fire, unleavened bread, and bitter herbs. That's it. Little wine, yes, of course. They shall eat it. Verse 9, eat not of it raw nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire. Meaning don't make a stew out of it. It is to be roasted because it is supposed to represent how quickly they prepare this meal. It is a meal of haste, because with haste Allah Hayam Yahweh delivered his people out of Matzorayim. He said here his head with his legs and with the pertinence, which would be the entrails thereof. So imagine the head and the legs and even the guts inside, all was roasted with fire. Verse 10, and you shall let nothing of it remain until morning, and that which remains of it until the morning you shall burn with fire, and thus you shall eat it with your loins girded. Now, he said loins, he's talking about making sure that you're dressed and ready to go. Your shoes on your feet and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Pasach. Hallelujah. For I will pass through the land of Matzorayam this night. You see, it says here, I will. He is sending the demons to pass through the land. And will smite all the firstborn in the land of Matzorayam, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Matzorayam. Remember what I said earlier. This was a judgment. The 10 judgments that Allahayam, the 10 plagues that Allahayam sent were judgments set against the gods of Matzorayam. And that included the 3 days of darkness. So, and against all the gods of Matzorayam, I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Matzorayam. So the blood, the devils were instructed, when they see the blood, pass over it. Pass over it. Don't go near it. Pass over it. Oh, yeah. We see death after the 3 days of darkness. We see death came after the 3 days of darkness, as in the death of the firstborn of Matzorayam. Whereas death occurred in the camp of Yasharaal during the 3 days of darkness. This time around, Allahayam during the 3 days of darkness will cause death to occur for both the Gentiles and the rebellious of the southern kingdom, including also the sleeping northern kingdom. They are not awakened to their true identity as yet. Therefore, there will be death in every household on the earth except the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom. So let us recall why the 12 tribes were spared death in the first place. The blood of the sacrificial lamb daubed on the post and lintel of their door caused death to pass over them. Similarly, for the southern kingdom to be spared death, we too must daub blood on the post and lintel of our door, the door to our hearts. The blood must be that of Hamashiach, which was shed a long time ago, and it is still available to us today, only if we believe in Him. By believing in Him, we are atoned of our sins, and we are spared death, the result of the wrath of Allahayam, Yahweh. We were born in sin and under His wrath. But when we receive Hamashiach, when we believe in Him, and we are atoned by the blood that He shed on the stake, the wrath of Al-Hayam is rolled away from us, and we're now cloaked in the righteousness of His Son. So now He is no longer angry with us until the day we are permanently cleansed of our unrighteousness, of our, not unrighteousness, of our sin nature. Because we're no longer unrighteous or self-righteous. We're now cloaked in the righteousness of His Son, and that's what He looks upon. But we still have the problem of the sin nature that needs to be erased from within us, that we were all born with due to the curse that Adam and Hawa brought upon themselves and upon every single person that was born except Hamashiach. All right? It is the curse of the sin nature that needs to be removed. Once that is removed, then we will be as Adam and Hawa were before they sinned. But for right now, as we are living here on the earth, we have only one recourse, and that is the blood of Hamashiach. All right? The blood of Hamashiach, to cleanse us from all unrighteousness and to preserve us from death. Without the blood of Hamashiach cleansing us of our sins, we are doomed for destruction. So anyone that denies Hamashiach, you are doomed for destruction. They are doomed for destruction. You cannot make it into the kingdom without being cleansed by Allah, by Hamashiach. He is Allahayam because that is a title. That is His title. All right? When we receive Hamashiach, he gives us his Ruach. And it's through his Ruach now we are learning and we are growing into righteousness. We're growing in holiness. Because it is Ruach HaKodesh who goes in and removes the filthy things, the hidden things that aren't supposed to be in us. He uproots all the roots of evil, all the roots of sin. He does surgery on us so that we don't fall back into old habits and become sinful before him. So when we are serious about our spiritual walk, these are the things that he wants to do within us to preserve us as a person and as people, his people. We can't do it in our own strength. There's nothing we can do for ourselves to become righteous before Allah Hayam Yahweh. The only righteousness that he receives is the righteousness of his Son. So you deny the Son, you are doomed for destruction. All right. But with his blood applied, as he was the lamb without blemish or spot, slain before the foundation of the world was laid, we can know with confidence that our lives will be spared death that is coming. And that death for the southern kingdom will be during the 3 days of darkness. All right? None of the southern kingdom will be here. Either we're gone in the chariots, or those that didn't make it in the chariots, they'll be destroyed and buried. Let's look at Yochanan chapter 1 verse 29. The next day Yochanan, this is the baptizer, saw, that's John the baptizer, saw Yahweh coming unto him and said, behold the Lamb of Allah Hayam, who takes away the sin of the world. When he says the sin of the world, he's talking about his people, yeah? He came to deliver his people. He came to be the lamb that was slain, that was going to be slain for his people. First Peter chapter 1 verse 19. But with the precious blood of Hamashiach, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot, who verily was foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these times for you. So he came to be a servant. He came meek as a lamb so that he could die to redeem us back to the Father through his death on the stake, so that now we have a chance, an opportunity to make it into the kingdom through his righteousness. Revelation chapter 5 verse 6. And behold, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the four beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7-fold spirits of Allah Hayam sent forth into all the earth. And then we drop down to verse 12, saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. And these are the 7 horns that were upon the head of the Lamb that looked as if it was slain. Revelation chapter 13 verse 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him whose names are not written in the Lamb's book, in the book of life, of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So even before we were here, the plan was laid that he was coming upon the earth to be as a man so that he can die. Even before Allah Hayam Yahweh laid the foundation of the earth, of the world. The plan was put in place for the redemption of his people through the death of the son of Allahayam, who is Hamashiach. We know that the original 3 days of darkness in Goshen began in the time frame of the evening of the 6th to sometime in the evening of the 7th of Abayah. Why? Because the 7th day is inclusive of the evening of the 6th to the evening of the 7th. That is the 7th day. After the darkness passed, Habanai Yasharaal were instructed to keep the Pesach lamb from the 10th of Abayah, which lines up with the 3 days of darkness when it started on the 7th. So after the 3 days of darkness, then they were told to go choose a lamb and keep it until the 14th. There was a time of preparation which was before the evening of the 14th to start the Pesach on the evening of the 14th until the 15th. Actually, it was the evening of the 15th. So that is a slight error there. All right. So they killed the Pesach lamb on the 14th, and they had their Passover according to the Yahweh, the book of Jubilees. They had their Pesach on the evening up to the evening of the 15th. All right? And it was during this time that death passed over them. While they were celebrating in anticipation of their release from bondage. I read that really, really oddly. Let me read that again. It was during this time that death passed over them, while they were celebrating in anticipation of their release from bondage. So while they were celebrating, death was passing over Goshen and destroying their firstborn. Now during the 14th day of Abayab, before Pesach began, they received their reparations from Matzorayim. They left Goshen after midnight of the 15th, which was a full moon, as death struck Matzorayim at midnight, and they were evicted from there not too long afterwards. They were led to the wilderness where they had to learn their culture, their path of years, and all that they needed in order to be Yasharaal, the chosen of Yahweh, to know how to worship Him according to His requirements. So let me pause there. I know I said there's a slight difference. So here are the slight differences between the 3 days of darkness then and the 3 days of darkness that is coming. The 3 days of darkness then, they had several days because they had to celebrate the Pesach before they left Matzorayim. With us, that is the 3 days that are coming, the 3 days of darkness that are coming, we are not going to be celebrating the Pesach here. All right? That's another difference. Now, how does all this help us to know the season and the date of the 3 days of darkness and the regathering of the southern kingdom? We know that the 3 days of darkness came on the 7th of Abayab for our forefathers in Goshen. Therefore, it will be the same for us today, to expect the 3 days of darkness to occur on the 7th. It will start on the 7th of Abayab, according to Allahayam's calendar and not the Gregorian calendar, and certainly not the fakers in our land's calendar. All right, we're going according to what Hanawat told us about the calendar of Allahayam. All right, so the 7th then will be a Shabbat, as I said before. I said this in one of my studies before, that why we will not be out and about is because we will be celebrating the Shabbat, or we will be celebrating the Shabbat when the 3 days of darkness comes. And here it is. All right, I said this before, and that was given to me by revelation. Note that it will be the 7th day of Abayab according to the time zone of Yasharaal, meaning the country, Yasharaal. They call it Israel in the Middle East. Therefore, the darkness will come in other places on the 6th, and at various times, whether morning, afternoon, evening, or night in certain countries. For the time zone of Yasharaal, it will occur during the daytime when the sun is high in the sky. So, right now, if it is morning in the Middle East here, it is usually nighttime, say like in America or in Canada, actually Canada, North America, right? The night before is our morning after, all right? And so it will be throughout the world. There will be varying times, and it will be either the 6th or the 7th. But you have to go according to the calendar of Hanawak and the time zone where Yasharaal is located, which is in the Middle East. So you go according to their time zone and find the matching time zone for the country that you're living in. So the 3 days of darkness is coming on the 7th of Abayab. After the 3 days of darkness, Hamashiach will regather the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom on the 10th of Abayab. The regathering will occur on the 10th for a reason. But let me remind you that our forefathers remained on the 10th because they chose the lamb to kill it for the Passover meal, which they kept in Goshen. We are not going to keep Passover in the lands of our captivity when the 3 days of darkness comes. Once it comes, that's the ending of our enslavement. So it will occur. We will be regathered anytime from midnight and shortly afterwards, just like our forefathers, they left at midnight. Midnight on the 15th, they left, or actually slightly after midnight on the 15th, because death Passover, Matzorayim was awakened to the death that was going on in their households, and they cried out and they chased them out of the land. And this will be after midnight. So why the 10th and not the 15th like our forefathers? Because our exodus will be immediate, as we will be regathered in the chariots to be taken off the earth. We're not walking anywhere. We're taken off the earth. We're going into another dimension. It's called third heaven. It's called the kingdom of Alahayim, or the kingdom of heaven, or the garden of Odan. Whatever you want to call it, that's what it is. It's all three. As the feast of Pesach is the first feast of the year, we do not have a person to direct us as to the proper way of celebrating this feast day. Even up to today, even up to now, we have no one to really direct us on how to properly celebrate this feast day. Alahayam instructed Masha and Ahawaran. We don't have a deliverer like Masha. But Hamashiach is going to be our deliverer. And he is going to instruct us on how to prepare the Pesach lamb and to celebrate our Pesach feast day of joy. And it's not going to be kept here in the lands of our captivity where there's misery. It's the first feast day of our calendar, and it will be kept with him. That's why he's regathering us on the 10th. The time when we need now to get the lamb ready, to actually not get the lamb ready, sorry, to separate the lamb from the flock. And just like the lamb is separated from the flock, he is going to separate us from the peoples on this land, on this earth. This is our time of separation, of being called out and be separated. Not that we are the Passover lamb. No, we are not. But like the lamb that had to be separated for its purpose, we now must be separated for our purpose. As the feast of Pesach is the first, I read that already. Only Allah Hayam himself will teach us how to properly celebrate this day, starting with the sacrificing of the lamb. The lamb needs to be kept from the 10th of Abayab until the 14th. And this will be keeping in line with his commandments if we are taken by the 10th. So if he takes us by the 10th, then we can proceed with the preparations for Pesach in the kingdom of heaven, according to his commandments, all in line with his commandments. It's going to take nothing for us to be whipped out of here and land on his shores, get ourselves cleansed and ready to be presented to him, to get ourselves ready for the Pesach with him. Now, what keeps coming to my mind, when Allah Hayam Yahweh brought Yasharaal out of Goshen into the wilderness, he told him, for 3 days, cleanse yourselves to get ready to come up to see me. Hallelujah. 3 days they had to cleanse themselves to get ready on the day after. So we're taken on the 10th, 3 days, we're getting ourselves organized. Got to get rid of the sin nature. You got to bathe in the sea of water, eat of the tree of life. We're getting ourselves acclimated to the new climate that is going to be so pure. It's going to make our heads spin with joy. And then to learn. And then on the 14th day, to present ourselves before Allah Hayam Yahweh and celebrate Pesach with him. How it's going to be exactly, he hasn't really told me. But this is as much as I know. The 10th is more about us. The 10th to the 14th is more about us than about the lamb. We already have a lamb. His name is Hamashiach. Yet we will still have to kill a lamb, because it will be our lambs, not just one. It's going to be quite a lot of us. A remnant, but still quite a number of us. Quite, well, can't really give you a number. I have a number in my mind, but I'm not going to give it to you. Anyways, still a number of people that will be there. So you're going to be killing lambs. And he will teach us how to do all of that. All of that we will learn. Everything will just come to us in those few days. And then we present ourselves to Ha'abba, Hamashiach, as our high priest. We can enter into the tabernacle with him. Before, it was only the high priest that could go into the tabernacle, into the Holy of Holies, where Allah Hayam Yahweh dwelt above the cherubim. And now, when this all is going to occur, we all will enter into the Holy of Holies with Hamashiach leading the way as our high priest forever, after the order of Malachi Sadak. Malachi Sadak. Tongue twister. So you see why we have to be regathered on the 10th? Okay. The lamb. Okay, read that already. Pasach is a feast day of joy, and there will be nothing more joyous for us than to be delivered from our lands of captivity, to celebrate this feast day with true joy with Ha'aba. Our forefathers in Goshen celebrated this feast day with joy because they were getting ready to be delivered. For us, we are going to celebrate this feast day with joy because we have been delivered. Hallelujah. We have been delivered. We're not getting ready to be delivered. We are already delivered. And we will remain that way forevermore. From the 10th until the evening of the 14th will be our time of learning how to celebrate the Pasach according to Allah Hayam Yahweh's requirements. Getting ourselves ready. Okay? Getting ourselves ready. That's what I'm telling you, the season. I'm giving you the timing and the season. The one thing that I can't give you is the year. The Pasach is already passed for this year. We have another Pasach coming up. Keep yourselves ready, your garments clean, in case 2025 is the year we're out of here. If that passes, then wait for the next year, 2026. It's not going to be long. It's not going to be long. Now we see how all the pieces are falling into place once we understand the prophecies with their correct interpretations. Then the timing and the season will also fall into place. We now know that the date of the 3 days of darkness is the 7th of Abayab, just before the season of Pasach. And our regathering will occur on the 10th of Abayab, in time to keep Pasach, the Pasach lamb, and celebrate our first true feast day with joy in the presence of Allah Hayam, Yahweh. We know the season and the dates, but not the year. As Pasach has already passed this year, we can hope for next year. But unfortunately, as our calendar may be a day or so off from the true calendar, we have to gauge a time frame to keep watch for the 3 days of darkness and our regathering next year. Now, the Gregorian month of, which is the Gregorian month of April, that is our beginning of months. That's when our Pasach begins. When in the month of April, we have to do some calculations. And because they change time, they change the day, the length of the day, they change the hour, they change everything, we may be a day or so off, maybe 2 days off, 3 days off, 4 days off. So we can only gauge a time. We make the calendar and we say, okay, this is the calendar that we're going to follow. But generally around the middle of April or the 3rd week in April, we're going to keep that as the time frame for the 3 days of darkness, because that's generally when our Pasach occurs. All right, generally, not all the time. But the whole idea is we must be vigilant. We must keep watch, and we must pay careful attention, because when this darkness comes, it will descend suddenly. You're not going to get a chance to get home. But if you are doing what Allah Hayam has instructed you to do, you will not be caught outside. You will not be caught unawares. If you are keeping Shabbat on the correct day, you will not be caught unawares, because you're at home celebrating Shabbat. It's funny, because I'm going to finish up this last sentence in a minute. It's funny that I made a promise to Allah Hayam last week. Yeah, last week. I made a promise to Allah Hayam. Right? I know they say, yeah, you can go outside, you can walk, but not walk to a certain distance where you're tired. The whole idea behind Shabbat is that you don't get yourselves tired. It's supposed to be a day of rest, a day of having a holy convocation, spending time in service, singing, eating, drinking, and reading the scriptures, getting into the word of Al Hayam, a time that you spend with Him. So you don't have time to be being a busybody, going here, there, and everywhere. You don't have time for that. But sometimes you feel, okay, I'm just stepping outside to do, to retrieve something. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point that I'm making is I made a promise to Allah Hayam Yahweh only just last week that when Passat begins, there's nothing or no one that will cause me to leave this house. Nothing or no one. I made that solemn promise even before this study came up, before He enlightened me with this information. I made a promise to Him. I said, Father, I will never, because yes, I would, well, it doesn't really matter. Okay, that's the point I'm making. It doesn't really matter. But I wasn't very strict when it came to the Shabbat, where I remained only inside the home. Like one of the places that I lived had a large front yard. I used to go outside and walk back and forth and just enjoy the day. And then what happened? Okay, I'm going to have to tell on myself. I'm going to have to tell on myself. A friend came for a visit, not to my home, but to a place nearby. And I went to say goodbye to them. It was just like literally 10 seconds away. No, not, it would be more like 15 seconds if you're walking, because it's that close. So I went to say goodbye to them. And somehow I felt a pang of conviction in my heart. All right? I could have said goodbye on the telephone, because one event led to another where someone had to bring something to my house. And normally I don't allow things like that to take place. But from saying goodbye to my friend and talking, it just escaped me that, hey, this is my Shabbat. It only occurred to me because Allah Hayam Yahweh pricked my heart and said, what are you doing? But the person was already at my gate. What am I going to tell them? Go back? Take it back? And I repented. And I said, Father, this will never happen again. I don't care if whoever it is, it could be my best friend. They turn up at whatever place. I am not going anywhere to see them. I'll say, this is my special day with my Father. I'll say goodbye over the phone. I'll say goodbye over the phone. As a matter of fact, I'll say goodbye even before Shabbat starts, because I will not be calling you on Shabbat, because I decided to make that strictness for my Shabbat from that day onward, because I felt deeply convicted that I let one thing slip, and from one thing slip, I let another thing slip. And that's not normally like me. It's not normal. That is not something that I do normally. And I had to make a promise in my heart that when Shabbat comes, I don't care who it is. I don't deal with any business. I don't deal with anyone or anything on my Shabbat. I'll lock myself in my home for those 24 hours, from the evening off to the evening of the next day. Business can be taken care of afterwards or before, but not during. I made that promise before I did this study. And now that I've done this study, now I understand why Allah Hayam Ruach HaKodesh convicted my heart and said to me, no, you got to make Shabbat be more strict now. Imagine I go to say goodbye to someone down the street, not too far from my home, and the 3 days of darkness begin. Whose fault will it be? Mine. That's what happened in my dream. I went following these people because they were flying. They were wearing a suit and they were soaring and they were landing on these nice big inflated beds. And I was following them I, and not paying attention. I was distracted, not paying attention. That was the whole idea behind the dream. Distraction will cause us to lose our focus. And so this day will come upon us unawares. But if you keep focus and you keep your mind centered on Him, on His day, then we will see what is going to happen before it happens. And we will already be prepared. All right? We will already be prepared. You got to make some changes. We have to make changes. I had to make changes in my life. We're not perfect. He understands that we're not perfect. We're all still trying to figure this all out. But He will meet us halfway. We can't just throw it in and say, well, we don't know what Shabbat is all about. We don't know what this is all about. But if we purpose in our hearts that this is what we are going to do, He would either say yes or He would say no. And when I purposed in my heart that I'm not leaving home on Shabbat, He was in agreement with it. Full agreement. And here's the proof. Because the 3 days of darkness is coming on Shabbat. Oh, well, it's coming around Passover time. Maybe, keep Shabbat on that in that month and make sure you stay at home on on Shabbat day. It doesn't work like that. Because now it's out of convenience for you and not about Allah Hayam Yahweh. We're supposed to keep Shabbat every time there's a Shabbat. And He honors us when we do that. This is the whole idea. How can we even learn, know, understand anything unless He first tells it to us? We're not doing anything out of obligation. We're doing it because we love Him. And because we love Him, then He will in turn instruct us and teach us and guide us. Our year it will always begin in April. So we will keep this month as our time to watch and pray. Even fast. We don't fast on Shabbat. No, we don't. We don't fast on any of our feast days. Don't worry about what those devils in our land is doing. They fast for the Day of Atonement. That's not a day. None of our feast days. That's why they're called feast days. What does the word feast mean? Time to eat and drink. Yes, we need to afflict our souls. That's the Day of Atonement. That's a day of coming to repentance. But you still eat. The only time we are not supposed to eat is when He instructs us not to eat. So before Shabbat, before our feast day, Pesach, let us spend time fasting and praying. I did the calendar. Let me finish up here and then I'll finish what I'm saying. If not the year 2025, then there's always 2026. But the time is very near. Imagine He's giving us this information right now. So what does that tell us? That the time is at our doors. All right. Now I did when I got this information, which is only just yesterday, actually, yeah, I finished this study yesterday, and all this information that he's given to me, like I said, was confirmed in a vision that I received, a word that he spoke to me clearly, like a person is speaking to another person. He does that sometimes with me. And when he does that, it means that there's something significant about what he has spoken to me. And this is the significance here. The 3 days of darkness coming on the 7th, lasting up to the 10th. We're taken on the 10th. We're not spending another hour here on this earth. And that's the difference between our forefathers and us today. All right, our forefathers spent a few more days in the land of Goshen. We, as soon as the 3 days of darkness are over, we are out of here. And as I was saying, it inspired me greatly to do the calendars up to May of next year, because part of May is also our Abayab. Okay? And once they are completed, I will post them in the community post for anyone who wants to download them. If there's any other way that you want to receive them, you have to send me an email. I think I have my email listed in these. I'll put it in the description box so that you can send me an email, or even if I can send it to you through Facebook page. I have a Facebook page, but however which way you want to receive it, I'll send it to you. All right. And for us to keep watch and be diligent and be aware. All right. This is going to happen. This is truly going to happen. Don't worry about all those people there laughing and scoffing and mocking and saying that this is a Roman Catholic doctrine and false doctrine and all these different things. Don't worry about that. When Noah was preaching righteousness, they were laughing and scoffing and mocking him too. And what happened? The flood came and rose him up and destroyed the mockers and the scoffers. When the 3 days of darkness comes, we are going to be enlightened and taken off this earth, and all the other people will be destroyed. All our rebellious brethren of the southern kingdom will be destroyed. They are not coming back. They will not be resurrected in the first resurrection. They're going straight to Hades, the hellish part of Hades, waiting for the lake of fire to be created. They will not be judged again. This is our final judgment. This is the way and the manner in which Allah Hayam Yahweh is going to sift the southern kingdom. I've done many studies about this, and I've spoken about this at length in there are about 10 parts now to the 3 days of darkness, and I decided not to link this or call this number 11. I just wanted to do it differently. All right. So that's the ending of this beautiful study. It just blessed my heart. It blessed me deeply. Because I pray every day that the Heavenly Father would give me more revelation about this event that's coming, because it is coming, and so that I can let His people know. And surely He has given me more information. All right. So it's up to you to accept it or not. So we're going to end with the blessing for Yasharaal taken from Ba Madabar chapter 6 verses 24 to 26. And this is Numbers chapter 6 verses 24 to 26. Yabarakak Yahweh wa Yashamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh panayo alayak wa yahanak. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'al Yahweh panayo alayak wa yasham lak shalawam. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And now I'm going to recite the command that he's given us to recite when we lie down, when we get up, when we go out, and when we come in, taken from the Barayam chapter 6 verses 4 and 5, and that's Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4 and 5. Shama'o Yashwa'al, Yahweh Allah Hayana, Yahweh Ahad, wa Ahabath'ath, Yahweh Allah Hayak, Bakal Lababak, wa Bakal Napashat, wa Bakal Ma'adak. Hear, O Yashwa'al, Yahweh our Allah Hayam is one Yahweh, and you shall love Yahweh, your Allah Hayam, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And with that, I will say, excuse me, Shalawam, Shalawam, all praises to the Most High, Abba Yah.